So that is one way of viewing the world, and I have some sympathy with some of what you've said. Let me give you another way, which is that many people around the world see the state of Israel as a country that is exclusively using military force, that has killed 70,000 people in Gaza.
Well, it finally happened. Someone sat directly across from Benjamin Netanyahu and challenged him with the very questions that millions of people around the world have been asking. And judging by the reaction online, this is the kind of exchange a lot of people have been waiting to see. Before we get into the full story, drop a comment letting us know where you're watching from. And make sure you like and subscribe so you never miss what's coming next. Now, this clip is only a couple of minutes long, but trust me, there's a lot to unpack. Let's watch the exchange, and I'll give you my thoughts and commentary as we go.
That is doing nothing to create a sustainable future for people there. That is a country, you've been accused of being a war criminal. That if you went to go to several countries in Europe, you're going to get arrested. This is not just mad campus radicalism. This is a feeling around the world. You said it yourself to us just now. In public opinion around the world, Israel is doing very poorly. And it's doing very poorly because people see a country that is behaving in a way that is not compatible with being a liberal democracy. And therefore, I think you have a problem. I think that loss of public opinion, what struck me from your autobiography was how subtly and for how long you have understood this. You know that political power comes from public opinion, and you know that you need to win the battle of public opinion, and you're losing it. You've absolutely lost it in Europe, but much more worryingly for you, you're losing it in America. And I think that what you've just told me about fanaticism is true in part, but it is not going to shape public opinion. People are going to roll their eyes and say, he's saying that anybody who says anything critical about Israel is anti-Semitic. He's giving this large, this story about fanaticism, and he's not accepting the fact that Israel is behaving in a way that we think is incompatible with the kind of liberal democracy that he claims.
And honestly, that's the part that stood out to me the most. The interviewer wasn't just talking about criticism coming from a handful of activists or political opponents. He was talking about a much bigger shift in public opinion, especially in the United States. Whether you agree with that assessment or not, it's hard to ignore how much the conversation has changed over the last year. You're seeing more debates online, more scrutiny from voters, and more attention being placed on politicians and organizations connected to Israel. Issues that once received limited attention are now being discussed everywhere, from major news networks to social media platforms. And that's why this moment is so significant. The discussion is no longer confined to political circles. It's become part of the broader public conversation. Now, before Netanyahu responds, I want you to pay close attention to the reactions from the hosts sitting beside him. Sometimes the most interesting part of an interview isn't what's being said, it's what's not being said. Watch their expressions carefully as Netanyahu attempts to push back against the criticism and present his side of the argument.
To Afghanistan, to Iraq, and so on, the ratio of combatants to non-combatants killed was 6-1, 7-1. And in Gaza, because Hamas was forcing people to stay in urban areas at gunpoint, the ratio is about 1.5 to 1. And we lost a lot of soldiers because we didn't carpet bomb.
That is disputed, Prime Minister.
We didn't do...
People have different ratios as well, including...
I'm telling you, you don't actually, but that's not the point. It certainly wasn't 6-1 or 7-1, and we certainly didn't carpet bomb, which we could have done right away. We've lost a lot of people by my refusal and the IDF's own mores in making sure that doesn't happen. Now, if you have the densest urban warfare theater in history, with 500 kilometers of terror tunnels underneath, 50 meters below, 50 meters above, everything booby-trapped, and you don't come in and just bomb the place to smithereens, which we didn't. I mean, we had everything booby-trapped. We moved the population out, and then you have to fight the Hamas in there. The ratios in Mosul, the ratios in Fallujah, the ratios elsewhere, there's nothing comparison, and that was nothing compared to what our soldiers, our brave soldiers had to face in Gaza. So A, I dispute the fact. The argument that you put forward is being put forward. It doesn't make it true. What is true is that Israel is fighting these worst killers, these people who took not only beheaded our men, raped our women, and then murdered them, burned our babies alive, and took 255 hostages, which we took out. Nobody believed that we got them out. These are barbarians. And they're given a free look. I have demonstrations on behalf of Hamas. Notice that they're burning the flag of Israel.
Now pay attention to what happens next, because this is where the conversation takes an interesting turn. Rather than directly addressing the growing concerns that have been raised, Netanyahu shifts the focus toward a much broader argument. It's a strategy we've seen many political leaders use when they're under pressure, move the discussion away from the criticism itself and reframe it as part of a larger struggle. At least, that's how many of his critics see it. Watch carefully as he attempts to redirect the conversation and present the issue through a completely different lens. Instead of focusing on the specific concerns being raised by the interviewer, he starts making a wider case about values, security, and the bigger picture. Whether you find that argument convincing or not, there's no denying what's happening here. The debate is no longer just about events on the ground. It's becoming a battle over perception, public opinion, and who gets to define the narrative. Take a look at this next part for yourself.
The flag of Israel and the flag of America. When you have pro-Israel demonstrations, they wave Israeli flags, they wave American flags, they wave British flags. These people are against you. Whether you recognize it or not, they will sweep away your societies, your freedoms, your ideas, the values that we cherish exactly
Prime
as you
Minister,
do.
it really isn't just extreme radicals. There are huge numbers of people who are concerned about Israel's behavior, frankly, including people like me.
Well, you
Friends
know,
of Israel who
I
are
think that if Britain was invaded, forgive me, you know, if Britain was invaded and you had the equivalent in Britain, your population is what, 65 million, something like that, 60 million, right? So you're about 6 times our size. So if you had on one day about 8,000 Brits murdered, mutilated, raped, and kidnapped, and they came right next to London, what would you do? We know what you did. We know exactly what Britain did, and I don't hold Churchill or the British government or the British people who supported him responsible for saying you shouldn't act that way. You bombed the living daylights out of German cities.
And that's really what makes this interview so remarkable. For a long time, critics of Netanyahu's government have argued that difficult questions weren't being asked directly enough. In this exchange, however, the interviewer wasn't backing down. He challenged Netanyahu on issues that have become the subject of intense debate across much of the world, and you could feel that tension throughout the conversation. Now, regardless of where you stand on the conflict, one thing is clear. Public opinion has become a major factor in this story. Governments can win arguments and press conferences, but winning over public sentiment is a completely different challenge. And right now, the debate surrounding Israel's actions in Gaza is more intense than ever. Critics point to humanitarian concerns, civilian suffering, restrictions on access, and allegations that have been raised by international organizations and legal bodies. Supporters of Israel, meanwhile, argue that the country is responding to serious security threats and facing circumstances unlike most modern conflicts. But what stood out in this interview was the growing gap between those two perspectives. The interviewer wasn't simply challenging a policy decision. He was challenging the broader narrative. And for perhaps one of the first times in a major exchange like this, those concerns were put directly in front of Netanyahu without much room to sidestep them. That's why so many people have been reacting to this clip online. Because whether you agree with the interviewer or with Netanyahu, this wasn't a routine political conversation. It was a direct confrontation between two very different views of what's happening and how history will ultimately judge it. And that's why this moment is getting so much attention. But that's just my take. What do you think about this exchange? Do you think the interviewer asked the questions that needed to be asked? Or do you think Netanyahu effectively defended his position? Let me know down in the comments below. And if you enjoyed this video, don't forget to leave a like and subscribe for more political commentary and analysis. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.